Hi, I'm Dr. S.G. Brownlow with Adept Psychology. If you know me, have worked with me, follow me on social media, then you know that I'm somebody who just doesn't think the way most people do. When there's a certain set of things that people say are always true, I tend to question those things. I expect things that are true to be true. That's just my value, I guess. And I really think that there are consequences to the ideas we have and the words that we use. And so this time I want to talk a little bit about your inner child and exploring your inner child and working with your inner child, and why I think that that idea is poorly considered. I think if we follow it to its logical conclusion, it's counterproductive and maybe even dangerous. There are a lot of different kinds of people, but to illustrate what I'm talking about, I'm going to talk about the kind of people that I usually deal with. I call them natural therapists. Other people have come up with other words for them. But the description, I hope, will help you, because the chances are, if you're watching this, then you're a natural therapist. The best way to describe a natural therapist is that they are very connected to their heart at a very deep level. And because of that, they have a lot of complex feelings and values that are very important to them, but that a lot of times they don't really talk about very much. So if you are a natural therapist, then I can tell you an awful lot about yourself and an awful lot about how you were probably brought up and your experience of childhood. You're, first of all, very sensitive and empathic, and you have some very strongly held values that you don't talk about very much because other people don't always understand them and they make fun of your values. But the values are very central to you, and they're about things like truth and beauty and connectedness and fairness and spiritual development, meaning, purpose, deep relationships with other people. Those are all things that are extremely important to you. And your understanding of other people is very intuitive and situational and case by case. And so when you do therapy, you don't rush in with a program and an idea about how you're going to conduct things. You adjust, and every session is different. Every intervention is different. Every client is different. And you always see what's good in the client, and you find ways to draw it out of them with a constant series of evaluations and assessments, because every time you intervene, the situation changes. And so now it's time for another assessment. What's the next intervention? That's how the people that I work with, the natural therapists, that's how we work. Now there's a downside to that. And the downside is that when people aren't there, we're still all connected to our heart and our gut. But now the signals are about ourselves, and they tend to be stories, very emotional stories. You got stepped on. These people did this when you were this age. this didn't work out the way you wanted it to. If only that had happened. If only these people could have seen who you really were and treated you differently than how they did. That's our inner child. It's those stories, that emotionality. And that emotionality leads our inner child to become, in many instances, an inner brat. And our inner brat is pouting and throws temper tantrums and whines and blames. And our inner child and our inner emotionality and our inner stories then lead to a lot of very superficial, childish, black and white thinking. I always, they never, this is all their fault. Sometimes this is all my fault. But at any rate, that thinking is completely superficial. It's completely at variance with the depth of our feeling, of our values, of our connectedness to other people. So when we're focused on other people, we're these deeply connected, egalitarian people. But when we're focused on ourselves, we're these superficial, blaming kinds of people who are all wrapped up in ourselves. So here's the piece of this that's important. I know that if you're a natural therapist of the kind I'm talking about, then as a child, you got stepped on. But the point is that what got stepped on was not your stories. It was not your emotionality. What got stepped on was your core values. What got stepped on was your sensitivity, your empathy, your desire for fairness and justice and peace and tranquility. And all of those things, people told you that your purpose was too vague, or it was too idealistic, or your meaning wasn't right, or any of those kinds of things. That the world didn't work that way. You were naive and simple-minded, and they discounted you. They didn't trust you. They didn't think that you meant it or that you were being very realistic. And the point of this is that if we rely on our stories, on our inner child, on our emotionality, our poor thinking, our victimhood, that's leading us directly away from what we value the most, which is deep relationships with other people at a very deep, meaningful level. Getting that involves getting away from our stories and getting back to our hearts. Owning what's in our hearts, even the parts that have been stepped on and the parts that have been hurt. Now that's hard work. It's scary work. It's something that people don't always think that they're capable of doing. But I've been there. I've helped other people do it, and I'm here to help you do it when you're ready to do it. That's what the mission of adept psychology is.